Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to Apply. All right, so today is a very special episode. We have Janine Hamner Holman on the line, and she is founder and CEO at J&J Consulting Group. Janine, welcome to the show.
Hi, Adam. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, Janine. So I'm excited to announce to our audience today that you are an upcoming author in one of our Mission Matters book releases. So first, I'd just like to say welcome. And again, congrats on being selected as an author.
Thank you so much. I am so excited about it, and I cannot wait for the book to come out.
Me as well. And when it does come out, we're going to bring you back on for a deep dive into the book and into your writing. So for everybody watching, you're in for a treat. But for now, we'll start this episode the way that we start them all with our Mission Matters Minute. So Janine, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Janine, what mission matters to you?
I love that question, Adam. And so for me, I am on a mission to have the world of work be one in which everyone can thrive. And of course, I'm not going to get there during my lifetime, but I want to get as close as I can. So getting to be part of this book on leadership is part of that. Getting to be here with you today is part of that. Finding all of the different ways that I can to have work be enlivening for people and enriching for people where everyone can thrive.
Yeah, it's great. Love bringing mission-based entrepreneurs on the show to share why they do what they do, how they're doing it, and really what we all learn from that and how we gain and grow together. So awesome having you on. And I guess just to get us kicked off, let's start a little bit earlier in your career. So tell us a little bit more about how you got started in business and maybe as a business owner.
Well, like most people, it was a completely non-linear path.
Yeah.
I never had a plan to be a business owner. My first plan actually was to be an attorney. And I got an opportunity to work in two very large law firms in New York City and thought, oh, no, this is not what I want to do. And so then actually I did a teeny little pivot and went to work for nonprofit organizations for the next almost 20 years. And then in 2008, took a step back from that and got recruited by a Fortune 200 company. And then in 2016, end of 2016, left there and started my own business. And sort of, the through line through all of that was really looking at what has organizations thrive? Where do people in particular get hung up? And one of the things that was really surprising to me, maybe naively, because, people are people, but I really thought it would be very different moving from sort of social change nonprofit organizations to a Fortune 200 company. And all of the stuff that happened, whether it was the good stuff or the not so good stuff that happened between people, it was exactly the same at the little nonprofit organization and at a $4 billion corporation. And that's really part of what drove me to create my company, really looking at how do we help people be their best at work so that then organizations can also do whatever it is that they're up to doing.
Yeah. So I want to keep maybe the conversation to those early years for a moment or two longer.
Right.
And the reason why is because, right now there's a lot of people that have, let's just say, you said there wasn't quite a linear path. Well, I don't know who has a linear path. I know there's some people out there that do, but they don't come on this show. Most of the entrepreneurs I talk to and business owners had a non-linear path, myself included. Like if you would have told me when I was in college, I'm going to grow up and be a podcaster. I don't even know podcasts were around when I was in in college.
They
So,
definitely weren't
uh,
around when I was in college.
so that was not a thing that was on my radar. Let's put it
Right.
that way, to say the least. But where I'm going with this, Janine, is, there's a lot of people in transition right now. Whatever the catchword or the buzzword, whatever it is that they're using today, doesn't matter to me. But the point is people are in transition. Like
Yeah.
maybe their company downsized, or maybe their company closed. I mean, there's a lot of different things that happen, or maybe there's more opportunity out there, and it's the complete opposite. They're in a
Right.
transition because the world of opportunities open to them. So a lot of different ways to be in transition right now. But what would you what are some of the tools or some of the thoughts that helped you along the way as you navigated your career going through these different, transition phases?
So I think, it's one of those things that's really easy to
Mm.
say and not so hard to do,
Yeah.
or very, very hard to do. But
Yeah.
really, it's about not making it all so significant, not
Mm.
feeling like, I mean, I remember the birthday that I turned 25, and I was living in New York City in a one-bedroom apartment
Mm.
with 2 other people, and I thought, like, okay, 25 is a grown-up age, and this is not how a grown-up should be living. I need to make some
Mm.
changes. And it was all very significant to me. It was
Mm.
very important and meaningful.
Mm.
And it got me to make some changes, which
Yeah.
was good. And if I could have been a little more chill about it all and not been so, like, not have my identity so
Mhm.
wrapped up in it, it would have been easier to navigate.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think the biggest thing is breathing deep
Mm.
and realizing, like, change is a part of life, and us
Mm.
humans, we don't like change very much. There's
Mhm.
like 2% of humans who are like, yay, bring on the change, and
Yeah.
all the rest of us are like, no, I like it like this. And so if we can, when we can,
Mhm.
remember that, just like the waves crashing on the
Mhm.
ocean, change is a part of life. And so
Mhm.
it's about how we body surf or actually surf
Mm.
those waves that makes the difference. And so the more we can have a perspective of, it's going to be okay. And
Mhm.
I'm not the first one who's been in this boat. I'm not going to be the last one who's been in this boat. And, like, who are some mentors? Who are some
Mhm.
resources? How can I marshal my resources? I used to have this thought that, like,
Mm.
I should be able to do it myself,
Mm.
and really, like, that's the thought of a 2-year-old. I can do it by myself. Like, that's what we say when we're 2.
Yeah.
But then we forget as we grow up, like, that thought keeps hooking us. And the
Mhm.
more we can look to our resources and look to other people to help us navigate and to help
Mm.
us, through those times, and not take it quite so seriously, not make it quite so important,
Mhm.
like, it will all go better.
Oh, I love it. And one of the things that you said, and I love your professional use of the word chill. Like, if you could chill a little bit. So when as you're saying this, I'm like melting in my chair because I'm cracking up, because I'm thinking to myself, and this is actually one of my big goals. As I go into, I just celebrated a 40th birthday, and
Congratulations.
I'm thinking about it. And I mean, there's different points in my life where I've been up. There's been points in my life where I've been down, and in between, and everything else. Like, sometimes, riding high and business is going well, other things, and other times it's like, what am I doing?
Mhm.
And that's just the life of an entrepreneur. And the revenue and the height or lack of doesn't always dictate that. And as I'm realizing, as I get a little bit more mature in my career, is I'm like, yeah, chill is good. Like, because one thing that I feel like I haven't done a good job of is enjoyed the ride. Like, enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Like, when you're always measuring, which business owners out there measure, right? You can't improve what you're not measuring. But when you're always measuring, and that's your your fascination, and that's your day to day, even if you can separate and you don't make your identity part of it, it
Right.
still doesn't mean that you're enjoying the ride. And so
Right.
that's where I've kind of that's part of my ethos going forward, is I need to learn how to chill a little bit, Janine. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So I want to switch it up a bit here,
Great.
and jump around a bit, and let's talk a little bit about the book, and just to recap, for the listeners. So we're not going to go too far today. We will be bringing Janine back on the show for a full in-depth interview on her writing and on the book once it's live and out. But for today, just a little bit of a teaser, Janine. So what are some of the things or the ideas that you plan to propose in the upcoming release?
So, what I talk about in my chapter of the book is really about what I have called conscious leadership.
Hmm.
And really, it's about what do leaders need to be doing here in the 21st century that's very different from the way that we used to lead. I am a little bit further down the age road than you, Adam, and when I was coming up in the world of work, managers had generally a command and control perspective on things. And
Yeah.
it's like when you say to a kid, yes, you need to do what I'm telling you to do because I say so. Like that was
Mhm.
sort of the rule of how people managed.
Yeah.
And things have changed dramatically. And
Mhm.
really, in large part, it's because of the pressure that your generation, so you are the oldest of the millennials. The oldest
Mhm.
millennial is now 41. So you the oldest of the millennials, and the pressure that your generation has put on the workforce to
Mhm.
have work that is meaningful, to be taken seriously, even though you don't necessarily have as much experience as
Yeah.
somebody like me who's 57 and a little bit further down the road, you still want to be included in things. And
Mhm.
the reality is, so I just came back from being in San Diego where I got
Mhm.
to present and attend a conference on diversity, equity, inclusion, and
Mhm.
belonging. And the reality is, when everyone is included in conversations, and of course, not all conversations or we'd never get anything done, but
Yeah.
whenever everybody is included, and when we've got differences in ideas and experience, and in life experience, and in education, and in
Mhm.
background, and all the different things that make the whole panoply of humanity awesome, when we've
Mhm.
got those differences, we make better decisions as
Mhm.
organizations. We have better bottom line results as organizations that are more diverse are 31% more profitable than organizations that aren't. But what that means to manage and lead organizations like that, it calls for something very different. And so that's really what I'm talking about in the chapter that I'm getting to write is
All
about what is needed in 21st
mhm.
century leaders and how do we do that.
All right, that's enough of a teaser. We're gonna move on. And like I said, that's enough. We do sell books, and we want people to come back for the next interview too. So we're gonna
Yes.
stop there on that one. Let's get into J&J Consulting Group. So tell us a little bit more about your firm.
Awesome. So as I obviously what we do is we help people make work better. And so there's this expression out there about, like, if you find something that you love, you're never going to have to work again in your life. And my perspective is, honestly, that's nonsense. Work is different from play. There is a construct around work, and it's about having work that is meaningful. And so I do things with organizations that are everything from how do we create conscious leadership? Sort of what does organizational culture mean, and how can we create that as a great entity? Um, am I echoing a little?
No,
Or am I okay?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, great. Thank you. Um, We work on emotional intelligence, what's called now psychological safety in the workplace.
Mhm.
How do you create that? Part of how you create that is you get rid of toxicity in your workplace.
Mhm.
So we work on issues around toxicity and civility and incivility,
Mhm.
um, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. All of those kinds of issues is what we do.
Yeah. And so what type of companies do you find typically get the most value out of working with you and your team? Is it for large enterprise only, middle market? Do small business owners have a space there? Like, give us a little bit more of a flavor for the types of organizations you like to work with.
So the kinds of organizations that I like to work with are the kinds of organizations where they really have something has happened and they've
Yeah.
understood we've got to make a change. Usually that's not large enterprise
Hmm.
organizations. Occasionally it's a team within a large enterprise organization. More often it's sort of organizations in the middle market and smaller businesses. So I've got organizations that I work with that are as small as 6 people.
Hmm.
And I'm also doing work with the County of San Diego, with the Port of Los Angeles, so some pretty big organizations as well as some small organizations. But nothing like the Fortune 200 company that I was working with before, because it takes so much work
Yeah.
to move that kind of ship. And being on a mission to have the world of work be one in which everyone can thrive, I don't have time to
Yeah.
do things that are just, we need to check a box. So I really want to work with organizations that want to get something done and that
Hmm.
understand that when we take these things on,
Hmm.
it's not common that it is a one-off webinar,
Yeah.
I come and speak to you and then magically, everything is better. That's not really how it works. And so,
Yeah.
figuring out how do we devote resources, and the only resources humans have are time, energy, and money. So how do
Mhm.
we devote the resources that we need to create the change that we seek?
Yeah. And so, Janine, I'm curious. We're going into Q4 of 2022 for context for everyone, and there's a lot of change, slow down in the economy potentially, and maybe things get even more bumpy going forward. Maybe not. What are some of the things that maybe CEOs should have on their mind when it comes to their workforce at present day? Like, what are some of those key issues?
So I think one of the things that's on everybody's mind
Hmm.
is what's often being called the war for talent.
Yeah.
There's this idea that we have a shortage of people who are talented,
Mm.
and I also think that that idea is nonsense. We have lots of people who are incredibly talented. We may
Yeah.
not have all of them in the right spots,
Mm.
and so part of what's been happening through the last year and a half, which is when people have been throwing around this term, the great resignation or the great reorganization, or sort of whatever we're calling it.
Mhm.
In the midst of COVID, one of the things that happened was that people started looking at, is this how I want to live my life? Am I
Mm.
living out my values in a way that it really resonates with me? And it
Mhm.
makes sense. We got thrown into this huge time of turmoil and reorganization, and organizations that could send all their people home to work. And and so then many people were like here at home, and they've also got
Mhm.
their kids, and sometimes they've got their parents, and people were juggling lots of different things. And for most people that puts you into a space of introspection. And so the things that were bubbling up anyway,
Mm.
how do I have what's often called work life balance? Another
Mm.
thing that I don't believe in. I think it should be work life harmony.
Yeah.
We're never going to have balance. Everything always goes like this. So, what we
Mhm.
want is a harmonious situation um, where I feel solid as a human.
Mm.
And, so many people are dealing with issues around burnout and mental
Mhm.
health. Our mental health has taken a huge hit
Mhm.
during COVID. And so organizations now are, I think, getting to look at,
Mhm.
how do we set up our organization so that people really want to work here? so that our top talent is actually going to stay? And how do we keep our people healthy, wealthy, and wise? And so, in the past, organizations said, well, let's throw money at the problem. It's the easiest thing to do. That's one of our resources. Let's throw money at it. Let's give people more money. Let's give hiring incentives. Well, you give somebody here $10,000 or $20,000 for coming to work at this organization. I've been here doing the hard work for 5 years or 10 years or a year and a half or however long it's been. I'm not getting $20,000.
Yeah.
And I start feeling resentful over the fact that she got $20,000 or he got $20,000 or they got $20,000. And so taking a step back and figuring out really what sets our organization apart in terms of our mission, our vision, and our values, and getting real about those things and the lived experience about those things. So many organizations say, we value integrity. Well, okay, find me an organization that doesn't value integrity, that says, yes, send all of your criminals and your people who can't be counted on here. That's what we want. No, nobody says that. But what does integrity mean here? What is the lived experience of integrity at this organization? And when we get really clear on those things, that's then what's going to differentiate us in the marketplace. And that's what workers are looking for. And that's what's going to make you sticky as an organization, where workers are going to want to come and be part of your organization, and then they're going to want to stick around.
What I want to stay on this on the idea of retention a little bit longer here, and I know that there's no one size fits all. So when I ask this question, I'm not expecting every organization is going to be different: size, complexity, culture, product, workforce makeup, demographic, like all that's going to be different. But broadly speaking, like when somebody's thinking about retention, if there were a checklist or some top things that they should be looking at, what are those?
I think the biggest thing when you're looking at retention is if you've been doing exit interviews, or if even better, you've been doing what are called stay interviews, talking with your people who are sticking around, figuring out, and if you haven't been doing them, start doing them, figure out what is it that gets people to stick around with your organization? Because as you said, it's going to be different with any organization. And 91% of employees think their manager doesn't listen, according to the Harvard Business Review. And according to Gallup, 86% of employees leave the organization because of their manager. So the biggest single thing that we can do, the majority of managers have never been trained. They got to be a manager because they were really good at their job. And so then they were promoted. But nobody ever helped them figure out what's the best way to manage people? What's the best way to engage people? And it's really different now than it was 20 years ago. So if you're learning from a mentor that you had 20 years ago, unfortunately, you're learning how to use a BlackBerry when what you need to be doing is learning how to use, an iPhone 14 or whatever the hell number we're up to. So, we have to stay abreast, and training managers is the biggest single thing that organizations don't pay attention to that makes a huge difference in terms of people sticking around.
So I want to spend a little bit of time here on your podcast. So the cost of not paying attention, first off, for anybody that's been watching this show or listening to this for a long time, they know I love promoting other podcasters. I think the podcasting community is absolutely amazing. And I mean, I haven't met a podcaster, I still say this to this day, that I haven't liked. So first off, introduce and tell us more about your podcast.
So as you said, the podcast is called The Cost of Not Paying Attention. And so we look at all of the things, mostly in the world of work, but not exclusively, that we're not paying attention to. And then what the cost is of that. So as I just said, most managers have never been trained in how to manage well. And so that's something that historically we've not really been paying a lot of attention to. I was brought into this Fortune 200 company and never trained. I was given a book of business originally of $2.5 million. And by the time I left, I'd grown it to 30.
Wow.
$30 million in
Yeah.
annual revenue. I was never trained on what my job was. I followed my boss around for a week, and then that was the end of that. Like, this is not a good way to train adults in how to do work. And it's what many, dare I say, most organizations do. And so that's what we do. We look at all of the things that we're not paying attention to, whether it is around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, whether it's around training, whether it's around profitability. I just recently had on a woman who has created a new platform for podcast hosts. So, it's looking at all kinds of different things. We talk about financial management, how to run a business, how to manage your own personal finances, sort of the whole panoply of us in the world of work and the things that maybe we're not paying enough attention to. We've talked about mental health. So, it's a fun podcast, I think. And it is in a conversational style. So much like this, it's just sort of like we go where the conversation takes us. And hopefully it's enjoyable for our listeners. We're now, I think, in 40 different countries. So, I've had it for a little over a year.
Amazing. And are there any, and I'm not asking you to choose between your favorite guests or anything like that, but are there any favorite moments or guests or interviews that stick out just to give the audience that's watching this a flavor for what you're up to over there? Because I definitely want everybody to go over there, check it out, and subscribe.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, one of my favorite all-time episodes was with a guy named Dr. Brian Harmon. And it was maybe like, I don't know, episode 3, episode 5, something like that, very early. But he is an expert. He has a PhD in humor at work. Like, who even knew there was such a thing? A PhD
I didn't know.
in humor at work. And part of what he's talking about is that if you come into an organization and like you walk in the door and you're hearing people talking and laughing, that is a healthy organization.
Wow.
Because people don't laugh when they're not comfortable, when they don't feel safe, when they don't feel included, when they don't feel like they belong, when they don't feel like they're in the right job, when they've got a toxic manager. Like we don't laugh when we're in those situations. So when you come into an organization where people are laughing, you've got a really healthy organization. That was a really fun interview. And I think it's still either the top or the second top interview that people have enjoyed.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Janine, I just have to say it has been great having you on the show and learning more about J&J Consulting Group and also your podcast, what you're up to, your ideas and values. I mean, your mission, of course. I just have to ask, what's next? What's next for you? What's next for your firm?
So literally tomorrow, I get to lead a workshop on managing conflict. Who loves conflict?
Yeah.
Like, again, there's like 2% of humans who are like, yes, I love conflict. Those are our attorneys. The rest of us, we don't like conflict.
Yeah.
And so how do we manage it and how do we manage ourselves? I'm also going to be speaking at a conference back in San Diego. There's something about me in San Diego these days, back in San Diego in December. And I'm really looking forward to that. So I'm getting to do a lot of keynote speaking and getting to do a lot of great work with organizations that I really love.
Amazing. And so, Janine, if somebody's watching this or listening to this and they want to follow up and they want to connect and learn more and to follow the podcast, of course, what's the best way for them to do that?
So the easiest way to find me overall is through LinkedIn. I'm the only Janine Hamner Holman there. And you can then get from that to the podcast. You can get to my Instagram. You can get to my websites. Feel free to email me. I'm Janine at jnjcg.com. But all of that stuff is at LinkedIn. So that would be the easiest place to go.
Perfect. And I'll have my team put all that stuff in the show notes so that our audience can just click on the links and head right on over. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time listening to a Mission Matters episode or engaging on the platform overall, we're all about bringing on entrepreneurs, executives, and experts and having them share their mission, the reason behind their mission, why they do what they do, and really what we can all learn from that so that we can all grow together. If that's the type of content that sounds interesting or fun or engaging to you, hit that subscribe button because we have many more mission-based individuals coming up on the line and we don't want you to miss a thing. And Janine, really, it has been a pleasure. Looking forward to the next time we get to work with each other when the book is actually out and live. So thanks again for coming on.
It's truly been my honor. Thank you so much, Adam.